Well, thank you very much for that warm welcome. I'm going to talk about what's next in Nuxt, and if you're here by accident, if you're here for the live coding yesterday and you were intending to miss this morning, I do apologize for that. That was a self-deprecating joke, just to be clear. I will occasionally possibly flag up jokes. It helps me know that I've explained them, and what joke isn't better for being explained? I think that's a fact. We're going to talk a little bit about Nuxt, but first, just worth saying who I am. My name's Daniel. I'm a full-time open source developer. I lead the team maintaining Nuxt, and I'm also involved in some other open source projects like Elk, which is a community client for Mastodon, which is a bit like a decentralized Twitter. And a few other things there as well, which I would love it if you checked out and explored or contributed to. That would be a lot of fun. Now, my background before I got involved in open source, I'm actually relatively new to the open source community. I didn't have a computer science or IT background. I had a small software as a service startup, which previously was a small creative agency. And before that, I was doing something totally different, which I'll happily tell you about later if you're curious. So I sort of came in from the outside and started fixing bugs and contributing back to the tools that I used. It's amazing, isn't it? Open source, the idea that people give you stuff for free, which you can use and build things with. And I was just amazed by this, wanted to contribute back and give back where I could, and just started contributing and being involved in open source from that point of view. And probably about 2019, something like that. And then started contributing more and more to Nuxt. And here I am, for some reason, giving a talk about what's coming next in Nuxt. If you didn't see it last night, I want to repeat this photo of my cat. It's actually very good that you did that, because she is actually watching the live stream, and it would have been awkward if you hadn't applauded her. Yes, this is Barley, and this is my view when I'm answering Discord chats or responding to issues or something like that. So if it ever seems like something strange, I haven't typed, if it was a very short and brief response, it's probably that Barley has stopped me from saying what I really wanted to say, so just so you know. I thought I would get a little poll of the room. Are you using Nuxt in production? So yes, you are. No, only Nuxt 2. Or I just want to highlight here how clever I am. I've said not yet. It's that kind of subliminal messaging that really, that's really, really, really clever. That was also a self-deprecating joke. I feel like I need to say that, because the other danger is that people sometimes take you seriously when you say things. The other day, someone came up afterwards and was like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear about the feud between you and Directus. I really hope it's not going to destroy the open source community. Actually, now I've repeated it today. It's going to become a thing. It's not going to become a thing. Okay, really, really interesting. So I'm really sorry, by the way, for the 4 people who are using version 2 of Nuxt. And for any of the people who are using version 3 now, who experienced what it was like to migrate from version 2 to version 3, if you haven't, you had to be there. That was a terrible experience, and I don't want actually to make light of it, because it was really bad. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. But I'm really glad to see that there's a mix of folk in the room. So I should probably say something about what Nuxt is. Nuxt is a full-stack framework for building web applications with Vue, and it's built on top of Nitro, which is our server rendering engine. We actually built it for Nuxt and then extracted it so that it could be a separately maintained project and benefit other frameworks as well. So we have contributors now who are nothing to do with even the Vue ecosystem, and it powers meta frameworks like Analog, Solid Start, Handstack Start, and I hope more. It's one of the areas where what makes open source great is the fact that multiple people are contributing to it, that it's not just tied to or driven by one project or agenda, but it benefits lots of folk. And I think Nitro is a great example of that, just by the by. But the aim is that with Nuxt, you should be able to get started and be productive from minute one. And that you should have full control over customization as you go, but you should be able to get started. And really this comes from the principle that Vue pioneered. So if you ever go to the Vue.js.org homepage, I believe you'll see that it's listed as a progressive framework. Am I right? Someone quickly check. I should probably have just confirmed this. Yeah, I think so. No one is telling me I'm wrong, so that's definitely a vote for yes. And for Vue, that means that you can adopt it gradually. So you can actually bring bits of Vue into your HTML. You can pull Vue itself in from a CDN, and actually you can sprinkle that interactivity into a website which might otherwise be rendered by Laravel or something else. And that was how I got started with Vue myself, building websites that just had Vue template syntax, but then it was made magical by loading the Vue script from a CDN. And I guess Nuxt obviously is not quite the same thing. You can't just put a script tag in and make your website powered by Nuxt. But the idea is very much that it should be incremental. So you should be able to take a bit of Nuxt. You should be able to take your existing app, just copy it into a Nuxt project, and it works. But then, as you need features that Nuxt provides, you should be able to opt into them. And so we've taken quite a lot of the approach of Vue 3, which is the idea of these composables, the idea that you don't have to access the reactivity system in Vue just from a magical this context, but you can actually import them and use them anywhere. And so for Nuxt, we do the same. So all of the features are importable, which means if you don't use them, you don't pay the cost. They're not in your build. So the idea is it should be progressive, and it should allow you to customize it all the way along as you go. I mean, that's the vision. It should start with best practices built in, but still give you the control to do what you want. And it was first created back in 2016, actually the very day after the release of Next.js, Nuxt was released. And can I just get a show of hands for who has ever found this confusing? I have found this confusing. You're on board with this. You thought, no, it's very, very clear. The U stands for Vue and the E stands for React. Well done. Because it is maybe I would have considered naming it something different. Although there has actually been a fringe benefit. Did you know, I was once scrolling through Twitter and just happened to see a tweet from someone talking about their SaaS startup. And someone was asking, they said, oh, I see you chose to use Nuxt. And so obviously my ears pricked up. What feature of Nuxt drew them to the platform? What amazing developer experience sugar brought them to use Nuxt? And the founder of this company said, oh yes, we told the marketing agency that we wanted Next, but I had an Australian accent, and so they built our website in Nuxt. We're like, well, however it happens, they chose Nuxt. Nuxt saw quite quick development in the beginning, so we moved to version 1, version 2. I wasn't even using Nuxt. I wasn't even coding in JavaScript by this time, so just to be clear, I didn't create Nuxt. That was Sebastian and Alexander Chopin, and there was a whole core team earlier on. But then we encountered the great divide. So in 2020, we started work on Nuxt version 3. And this had to be a big change. It had to be a breaking change, not least because Vue had migrated from 2 to 3, and there was a breaking change there. But for us, there were also other things. There was also PostCSS had a breaking change, and Webpack version 4 to 5 had a breaking change. And then halfway through the fact that the time we were actually building Nuxt 3, Evan goes, and for goodness sake, he creates Vite, which is obviously wonderful, and we love that, and thank you, Evan, but at the same time, it was very inconvenient for the creation of Nuxt 3. And so there were a whole raft of things that meant Nuxt 3 was a really big endeavor. We actually completely rewrote it. So I'm not sure there's a single line of code that's the same between 2 and 3. We created it in a separate repository. We eventually merged the histories back But it was a very interesting process. And it was also a very painful one. I just want to acknowledge that. If you were an early adopter in one of the release candidates or even earlier, or if you tried to migrate a version 2 site to version 3, there were a lot of things that were just very, very painful. Not just in Nuxt, not just in Vue, but also in the ecosystem. And we've learned a lot about what to do differently. Version 3 was released in November 2022. I started leading the core team in the January after that year, and one of the things we committed to at the time was a regular release schedule. So we aim for a patch release where we fix bugs every week or two, a minor release where we add new features about every month or so, and a major release where we break people's websites. Well, where we ship breaking changes, which hopefully won't break people's websites, every year or so. So we are due for version 4, not primarily because there are so many things that we have to ship that break, but more that it's the time where if we want to ship any breaking changes, we now can do it. And originally, I was planning to release Nuxt 4 in sort of about the middle of this year, in June. We're not there. We are currently in November. And I'll talk a little bit more about version 4, what's coming, and why we've been delayed. This is our download chart from NPM, which is notoriously unreliable, so don't put too much weight on it. But it goes up. That's what I'm taking away from this. This, by the way, is live data. Don't you love it when? So my slides, I guess probably quite a lot of ours are built with a framework called SlideDev, which is built in Vue by Anthony Fu, who's incredible, honestly. I could take the next 20 minutes just telling you about Anthony. But anyway, it means you can just drop Vue components and interactivity into your Markdown file for rendering your slides. And so I can just say, hey, make a fetch request to NPM, get some statistics on the download counts for Nuxt, and render it to a slide which will always be up to date. Isn't that cool? Yes, it's cool. Applaud Anthony. And so we've got some metrics. If there were KPIs that I had to hit, I don't know, these would be the numbers, I guess. Star count and downloads and % adoption of Nuxt 3.2. But actually, I don't really care so much about those. The metric that I particularly care about is this one. These are the contributors to Nuxt. So we're currently up to 794 when I checked this morning. And basically, the people whose pictures here you see are the ones who have made Nuxt what it is. Actually, there are quite a lot of more people who haven't contributed to the core framework, but who have built modules, libraries, integrations, who have written blog posts, who have created videos, and who have spread the news about Nuxt. And Nuxt is very much a community project. So we're not driven by a corporation which has a particular agenda. Our direction comes from the community. And I think that makes Nuxt really quite unique. Not totally unique. Vue is very much that as well, right? Vue is community-based. It is very much from the grassroots. We obviously have a wonderful, benevolent dictator in the form of Evan. But it is very much a sort of, he's a steward on behalf of the community, and that is a wonderful thing to see. Did anyone see that photo here? Yes, you did, by the way. I know for a fact there are people in the room who. But if not, it would be very easy to get your photo here. I would love it if you wanted to fix something. No pull requests is unimportant, by the way. Don't feel bad at any point if you notice that GitHub doesn't have an H capitalized and you want to open a PR to fix that. That's how it works, right? Small iterative improvements. My first PR, which you can find out by going to, you can find yours by going to firstcommit.is, first commit is, see what your first PR is. And you can look up other people's too. And you would be shocked by how many people start their open source contributing journey by making a tiny change to the docs that probably felt at the time to them like it was not very significant. So don't feel that. One of the things that makes Nuxt what it is our modules ecosystem. So and I think it's totally unique in the front-end framework world. So it's possible to write integrations that deeply hook into how the Nuxt build works and how the Nuxt dev server works, how the types work in users project, and more, in order to add any kind of feature or functionality that might be useful to people. And it's possible to do this at the local level, so you can do it in your own project. It's possible to do it in a monorepo level, so you have a shared package you consume. It's possible to do it via publishing to NPM, either a private package or even a public one that anyone can use. So these things are very shareable. And we have over, again, these are live numbers, we have over 250 that we track in a central Nuxt/modules repository. So there are a lot more than that, but those are the ones we track and we provide statistics for, and that have had some level of scanning through the code provided. It's not a total endorsement, but we try and make sure that stuff is working right. With over 202 maintainers, over 1,500 contributors, 20 million downloads, and 186,000 stars. And you can check them out by visiting nuxt.com/modules, or you can even get the raw data by hitting api.nuxt.com/modules. And you can see the data on all the individual modules, as well as some overall statistics, which this slide is pulling. So, I would love to know, one, I have two questions for you. So one is, what are you looking forward to in Nuxt going ahead? Two, what do you think about it now? You might not have an answer to both of those questions, but feel free to fire either of them in. And this is actually a terrifying moment, because people can put anything. So please, I don't mind criticism. Criticism is fine. I mind code of conduct violations, okay? This is being live streamed. Please exercise restraint. But what do you think? What do you think about Nuxt? What do you think about, what are you hoping for in the year ahead? I would love to know. Being very kind. Wait, I thought this was for Next. I'm sorry, it's the accent. Drupal, check out Drupal as an interesting Nuxt module from Drewnomics, I think. Worth having a look at that. Cat pictures, it's true. I think we could actually have, like a cat picture per release. A little bit how like Vue has, code names. We could have code cat pic. Pop, what? I feel someone is spamming the. By the way, there's also an endpoint you could just hit. Like you can fire this up on your CLI. If you really want to DDoS it, it can be more WordPress content. Well, that's fine, actually. I was running out of slides anyway, so we could just resume the live coding from last night. There were a couple more things I wanted to show you anyway. You think I'm joking? If you ask that as a first question after the talk, we can totally get in. So WebSockets was going to come next. I was going to show you about how to create a WebSocket to update everyone on your website when a new post was published. I thought that was cool. But for some reason, Jilson wanted to be on time. I don't know. Oh, for goodness sake, what is going on? I'm going to have to end it. Like, this is too much now. Do you know, it's going to become a real thing, isn't it? Like, this is going to be a problem. Okay, so we're going to process this feedback. This is unfortunately, I think it's going to be about directors. I'm a bit worried that OpenAI is going to take all of that content and come up with something that I'm not entirely okay with. Probably can't see this. Overall, there's a lot of positive feedback about Nuxt. Users mentioning it's ease of setup, it's simple, right? Comparison with Next.js, a few users. It can't detect humor, can it? It's not. I actually can't do humor either, so we're sort of like one and one. A few users expressed uncertainty about choosing between. That was also a separate self-deprecating joke. Just to be clear, between Nuxt and Next.js, or was it? With some suggesting that Nuxt could be more requests for more content. Several users wish for more visuals, such as cat images, and more specific. I'm just going to interrupt my slides. I'm going to take a screenshot of this because I feel I want to retain this. There we go. Retained. More cat content. Nuxt and Directus. They were brief, brisk, repetitive suggestions from some users regarding a possible merge between Nuxt and a platform called Directus, revealing a desire for the integration of features from both. I'm not sure that's what it revealed. It definitely did reveal something. Mixed feelings about WordPress. Don't we all have them? Okay, high satisfaction with Nuxt. I think we'll take that as an overall result. This is not science. This is LLM content. So I want to talk a little bit about what's next in Nuxt. And the first thing I want to say is that Nuxt 4 is not about hype. Oh, for goodness sake. It's not about hype. Oh. That's the last time I take a screenshot. Okay, it's not about hype. I'm not sure what happened there. I talked a bit about our release schedule. So we adhere to SEMVA, which is the idea that major releases are about breaking changes. That is the thing that makes it a major release. And so the aim is not to try and say, Nuxt 4 is amazing, come on people, we're going to change the world with the release of Nuxt 4, because that's artificial. I don't want to be driven by developing a framework that is primarily based around giving people fear of missing out if they don't adopt it, which, can I just say, is a terrible problem in the tech world. Like, it's really easy to get the feeling that you're falling behind. And obviously we want to tell people about exciting stuff that we create, but honestly, I don't think we do it well. I think we do talk about what we're creating, that's cool, and that's great, but I think sometimes we do give people the idea that if they're not the first to adopt, that they fall behind, and there's too much coming out. There are too many things to keep up on. And so that adds to people feeling like imposters, because they don't know everything. People can feel de-skilled. They think, I only know this one thing. People can start to feel pigeonholed. I'm a Vue developer, I'm a React developer. Ridiculous. Maybe you're a developer, you're an artisan, you're able to craft things with your mind, you're a magician of the web, yes, all of those things, but are you bound to a particular framework because somehow you feel you don't know the others? Poppycock. You can learn very straightforwardly, anyone can, we can all pick up whatever we need to pick up, but hype and the idea that we're somehow falling behind and getting left behind and being reduced is a total lie, and I think it has such danger to our mental health and our feeling of well-being and our ability to flourish. So I don't want Nuxt to be about that, and that is really, I hope, don't go away and tell people, I'm really looking forward to Nuxt. Well, you can tell them that you're looking to Nuxt 4, but I don't want Nuxt 4 to be about hype. It's about thoughtful breaking changes. It's about helping people opt into those changes early and helping people opt out to those changes even after they come, so people's sites are not impacted if they don't need to be. And the whole focus of the release of Nuxt 4, I can tell you, from my point of view, from our team's point of view, is about making sure that it is a good experience, as opposed to the horrific experience of migrating from Nuxt 2 to 3. We have a really good case study here. And I can't expect you to trust me totally on this until Nuxt 4 comes out and you do migrate your website to it. But this is what we're aiming for. So these are some of the things that are new. So we have a new directory structure. Now this is another opt-in and out. So if you use this directory structure, that's great. If you don't use it, it's actually your site will continue to work in the same way. But what we've basically done here is moved a handful of directories into a new app directory. That's the main thing. Some things remain outside, some things are in. So we basically have a very clear separation between your app and your server, and then all the rest of your code, which is sort of project-wide. So your app, that's your Vue part of your application. It's the bit that's responsible for rendering whatever is in that div ID Nuxt in your page. That's the interactive bit of your application. But there's lots of bit around it. There's your API routes. There's stuff that the server handles, and that's going to be in the server directory. And then there are other things too, like modules, which aren't part of your built application at all. They're just build time. There's a new shared directory which has code which isn't really dependent on either the server or the client, stuff like string utilities that you might want to share between the both of them, but really they're not dependent on one. And we're going to be doing stuff to really make it clear about the boundary between these two, so you don't accidentally import some kind of server-side dependency into your browser bundle. We're going to be able to ship better types because things are clearly scoped by directory, if you opt into it anyway. And we're also going to be able to ship a more performant Nuxt. So we don't have to watch your root directory. We can just watch the app directory and the server directory and the shared directory. And that will make your developer experience faster. We're also shipping a number of changes around the whole data fetching concept. And some of these you can opt into already. So one thing that you might know about Nuxt is that if you pre-render a page of your website, we at build time extract the data and we include it in a separate file so that even when you're doing client-side navigation, you never need to remake any of the network requests or other async requests to render that page. It's just download that file. And we even download that file if a link is on the page in Vue. You don't even have to, it's even before you click on it, so it's super fast. But you might notice that as part of that, we might end up rerunning the same network request over and over again on the server. So imagine in your CMS you have some shared data and you use it on every page of your site, and you're pre-rendering 10,000 pages, and you have 10,000 requests to that endpoint. Well, we're now going to deduplicate that, and you just get one. It's technically a breaking change, because if somehow you didn't have the right key and you used the same key for multiple different calls to different endpoints with different content, it might break it for you, but you shouldn't be doing that anyway. So we are really just trying to be safe. We are defaulting away from deep reactivity in the data that you fetch. People were fetching 5 meg of data. Please, if you can avoid it, do not fetch 5 meg of data in your payload. That is a lot of data. But in Nuxt 3, it was all deeply reactive, which was a bad thing from a performance point of view. And you can still configure this, even on a per user async data call, but we're switching the default to be non-reactive, so it's shallow reactive. So when the new data comes in, it's reactive. But if you mutate a tiny property somewhere deep inside an array, it's not reactive at that point, and that saves a lot of memory. And we have better defaults. So for use async data and error properties, they're going to be undefined rather than null. It's a breaking change, but I hope it's not one that's going to affect a lot of people. And one thing which we haven't shipped yet is a new data layer. So at the moment, because we're storing the data and the payloads on a global object in your browser, if you're navigating through lots of pages of your site and you're downloading megabytes of data on every page to stick in that payload, you can find memory usage increases. And really, I'd like to have a built-in solution that just stops that from being an issue. I mean, I can tell you not to have a really big payload, but we should avoid the problem in the first place. And so we'll have a data layer that manages integrating with the browser cache. So the browser can actually manage memory usage for you. And Nuxt is still going to work as expected. So it will be totally behind the scenes. You won't even notice that. But you'll find that your websites are more performant on low-end devices. Migrating to Nuxt 4, well, it's pretty straightforward in that you can simply enable future compatibility version 4 right now to test all of the breaking changes that we have currently built. So even on a 3. Release, we're currently on 3.14.1592. I released yesterday 3 minutes into my talk. I pressed the button down, but the CI was slow, so it was only as I was starting to code WordPress, which meant that we sadly did not get the latest version in the demo. But you can opt into it with that flag, and then all of this configuration here is what you would need to granularly undo the opt-in. So in other words, you don't need that. But if you figure out there's some you want to test by unflagging each bit of the new defaults, you can do that. So it's all configurable. which means if you're encountering an issue, when you try out the breaking changes of Nuxt 4, you can flip it off. You can test it, and you can basically figure out what the issues might be in your code or in Nuxt. So you have a look at that. Some of these will remain configurable even after 4 is released. Some of them will go away and not be configurable anymore. So there's a whole migration document that you can read through if you're looking for an absolutely riveting read one night before bed. I'm suggesting, by the way, that it might put you to sleep. But I mean, I did write it with love, so I hope it doesn't totally. But there's more you can do to test it out. So there's the link I just gave you, but there's also a code mod. The folks at codemod.com have created a raft of automated migrations for your code, including moving stuff into the new directory structure, like undoing some of the things we did, for like adding deep true to loads of use async data calls if you have got that everywhere in your code base. And whatever you might need, there are some tools that might be helpful from them, and you can try out the migration recipe. It will fire up a little CLI and ask you what you want to do. And if you want to see an actual website migration, you can look at mine. I migrated my site to this new compatibility version 4, and it basically just moved files into a different directory. Nothing else was required. The same was true for Nuxt.com. When we migrated that, it just was moving stuff around, no code changes. And I hear from a lot of people that hopefully that is going to be true for the majority of people. But give it a try. It's not done yet, right? So there might be more things that ship. So if you enable this flag, you should really consider this as a testing process rather than a stable, never-changing situation. But testing it is really helpful because it makes sure that when we do release it, there's not going to be any issues that people encounter that we could have prevented. And you can start a new project with the v4 compat template if you want to play around with it today. It doesn't do a lot. Right? It's just a flag to enable in your config and a new directory. But you can do that and play around. And I would love to hear what you think about it, whether there's any ergonomics issues, whether you notice the speed improvement or whatever. These are live photos of me, and also probably quite a lot of Nuxt users, because we were aiming for a release in June. But it's not out, and it's not out not because there's lots of work to be done on the Nuxt side particularly, but primarily because of the ecosystem. And we've built a lot of Nuxt on other packages. Obviously, Vite is a key package. We've also built it, obviously, on Nitro. And Nitro itself has dependencies on H3, which is like an Express-type framework, and others. And Nitro is aiming also for a major release, and it's so significantly a part of Nuxt, that means Nuxt would have to have a major release too. So we want to coordinate those releases. So our timeline is this. We needed to get Nitro 2.10 out, which completely refactored the internal project within Nitro, and that is now out. So this is done. Second, we needed to release Jitty version 2. Jitty is a library which loads the Nuxt configuration file as well as any other files that might contain TypeScript syntax, like your modules, any imports into those modules, and so on. It's used throughout Nuxt. It's also used by other projects like Tailwind CSS and so on to do that. That breaking change is out. And hopefully you didn't notice too much, but it is so much more performant. It falls back to native ESM in more cases where it can. It has a better file resolution algorithm, so when it's finding the file to import in the first place, it's more performant in doing that and more accurate in terms of loading the correct file. I live an exciting life, I'll tell you. And sometimes it's very weird. Like you're diving deep into like the specifics of how in Node you trace an import something, and how that gets traced back down to the file. Like, you wouldn't think that necessarily, right? It's a front-end framework. We're building stuff for the web, and yet every day is a new and exciting day, I'll tell you. But the next big thing is the release of H3. So H3 is this layer which is a little bit like Express or Connect. It's a framework for server routing. So a request comes in, and you need to return a response. It doesn't handle the server, that takes in the request from the outside world. It's more like inside the server. How does the incoming request get a response? And we're moving from a node-based API, where you have this event.node object, into a pure web standards one, with request, like native web request and response objects, which is actually a lot faster and will be more performant. The test, the benchmarking is incredible. Like, you would not believe it. And also, benchmarking is inherently, in some ways, artificial. So I'm not going to go out and give it like it, but really, it's amazing results. And so, although you'll be able to opt back in to use those node objects if you need to, it will be a separate import, and it will add a bit to your bundle, because we're trying to get rid of that for all the cases where it's not required. And once that is released, so when we have H3, that is the big deal. When you see that H3 is out, you can start sitting on the edge of your seat, because then we're in a countdown mode. And so the first thing is we're going to migrate the ecosystem to the new H3 version. That includes Nitro, like internally. That will also include stuff like Nuxt is going to have to update some of our code. I have it in a pending branch, but I can't merge it because it's not released yet. But we're also going to proactively merge, and I'll be opening PRs to modules. So if you're module authors, I will be opening, you'll see my little face popping up in your pull request tab, and I'll be opening PRs to migrate your server code to the latest version of H3. We're going to stabilize it, test it, update the docs, and then we're going to release Nitro version 3. And then you can really sit on the edge of your seat, because we are then on a very, very strict release to version 4. And so that will be the final set of PRs to the modules ecosystem. We have an ecosystem CI where we actually run the latest Nuxt like edge against a whole raft of projects that depend on it. If you want, by the way, to add your project to it and you have an open source project with tests, I would be delighted. Oh, and it doesn't take like an hour to run those tests. I would be delighted. You can DM me, or you can just open a direct PR to Nuxt/ecosystem CI. That would be a fantastic thing. And then you'll have version 4. But what's coming next? Now, these are not necessarily version 4 related. This is just our general roadmap. And in general, you shouldn't have to wait on any feature or enhancement that I'm talking about for version 4, unless it is something that very specifically depends on what we're shipping there. Like some of the Watcher performance improvements do depend on the directory structure. But most of these things, they're going to ship regardless of whether the version 4 release date is. If I have to ship Nuxt 4 with no enhancements at all, but just the breaking changes, I will. We would much rather ship the enhancements sooner. And I should also say that even after we release version 4, we're going to continue to maintain our 3.x branch for a minimum of 6 months. And that includes backporting not just bug fixes, but also features. So at the moment, we're doing that. So I'm merging changes into our version 4 branch and cherry-picking them back to our version 3 branch, so that as much as possible, we don't diverge and people still get the benefit of all the enhancements that we're working on. And we'll carry that on for a minimum of 6 months. And if you have a problem and you think the ecosystem has a problem and needs more time, let me know. So we're working on the new environment API that Vite is going to be included in Vite version 6, which will mean that your dev server is much, much more accurate in terms of what your final deployed project is going to be like. So if you're running in a workers type environment, it's going to work in dev in the same kind of way. But that will also be true for Bun or Dino or other runtimes, and that's going to be a really big deal. We're reworking typed fetch. So at the moment, if you don't know it, you get end-to-end type safety in a Nuxt project. If you're fetching data from your own servers and API routes, Nuxt knows about it and infers the return type. But what it doesn't do right now is infer the types for maybe the body or the query that API route is expecting. And so we're creating a new library called Fetch DTS. It's not open source yet, but it's basically going to make this possible not just for Nitro, but also for any project that needs to have typed API routes. And this is going to be, hopefully, a really big simplification. Because rather than everything needing to live in Nitro, where it lives right now, and then Nuxt having to re-implement the same types in exactly the same way, we're going to have just a single place where it lives, which is the fetch DTS. It's not going to do anything but provide types, this library, so it's not going to add any overhead to your code, but it is going to be a single source of truth for typed fetch data in your project. We're working on multi-app support, so not just module federation out of the box, but the idea of having a Nuxt application that can have separated bits within it, a separate like a route from one application can be imported in and used. You can navigate to that route, but actually it's from a different deployment. That should be quite a nice thing. And the same is true with a component. You'll be able to embed a component in one page, and that component is deployed separately. So I'm really excited about this. I've been working with the Module Federation folk, and it's a lot to do. And a number of folk in the community as well have already merged PRs to Nuxt, paving the way for this. So it's pretty exciting to see what's coming. We're going to be re-implementing, so Vue used to have a server component cache, where you could cache the HTML of a particular component. And we're going to be re-implementing this at the Nuxt level. It doesn't exist in Vue 3, but we think we'll be able to do it automatically to track the dependencies of any given component and know whether they're request bound, so to know whether we will be able to cache the data and speed up server renders. I have a PR ready to go for parallel island rendering, so if you're using server components in your Nuxt apps, we'll be able to significantly improve the performance and avoid waterfalls in rendering those. And a service worker layer that can be consumed by libraries like Vite plugin PWA and used by you or other modules in order to interact directly with the browser service worker layer. Here are two things that are fresh off the press and very experimental, but I'm pretty excited about them. So here's one. So if you build a static website with Nuxt, you have if you're using use async data, you have the key of the data, which is generated automatically for you based on where in your code the call is, or you can pass your own key. And then you have a function which is responsible for getting that data. And in this case, the function is extremely simple. It's just making a fetch call, but you can have more complex bits in there. So for example, in Nuxt content, there's a whole bit which imports a syntax highlighter, uses the syntax highlighter to highlight some text. So it's a huge chunk of dependencies. But if you're building a static website with Nuxt, none of this runs at runtime. It only runs at build time, right? The data is generated then. It doesn't need to run anymore ever, because there are these payload files that exist in your site. So we're able to take this code, this use async data call, which looks a little bit like this when it's compiled into a Vue component, and transform it at the bundler level so that it becomes a separate chunk, which can be lazily imported when required. So this means that it will continue to work. So if you have a manual refresh call and you need fresh data, or if you have any other reason why you need fresh data, it still will work fine. And in that case, it's going to go out and download the chunk and then run it. But it means that for the vast majority of cases, which is the whole lots and lots of users on a static site, they won't have this code at all. So I ran this on Nuxt.com, and it reduced the total JavaScript by 40%, and the total unused JavaScript by 66% with no loss of functionality. That's amazing. And it's automatic. There was no configuration required. And hopefully there's already a Nuxt module, an experimental Nuxt module called Nuxt Rebundle that you can try if you want, see if it works on your project. And we're going to be working to see if we can integrate something like this into Nuxt core itself. Here's another. You may have the chunk curse. Actually, that sounds terrible. You may have noticed that your HTML has something like this in it. Lots and lots and lots of script links when you're loading your page. And this is a product of the way that that Rollup is chunking the files for your build. So if you have dynamic components or if you have dynamic imports, each one of those ends up in a separate chunk, and they end up basically each needing to be loaded, even if they're just a few lines of code individually. And the problem with that is it can max out your browser's outgoing network request limit. Even if it's over HTTP2, I think there's still a limit of 100 files. Hopefully you're not exceeding that. But it all has a cost. And so also something that I've built, it's not even available in a module yet, but it's coming very soon once I get back from the conference. We're able to take all of those and rebundle them. I say dynamically. We can do it only at generate time, so there is no runtime cost for your app. But you can also do it at runtime, and it's cached. We can rebundle them into a single chunk, which re-exports all of the exports of each of the chunks. And then create an import map, which basically just says, you can't read it because I've probably made the mistake of base 64 encoding it, but basically, I should have just encode URI'd it, but basically it just re-exports them. So that's not the actual contents of the script file, it's just import this chunk from this single rebundled chunk, and then re-export what you would expect to have from this chunk. I'm saying chunks a lot. Basically, the way this works is that it reduces your initial JavaScript downloaded to one file, and then throughout the rest of your application, as you're navigating, it doesn't have to re-download any of those files again, because when it encounters a request for any of those files, the import map tells your browser to go back to the original rebundled file and access the data from there. Are you with me? It's a pure beneficial thing. There's no downside to it. And we'll be shipping that, no downside for a statically generated site. So we'll be shipping that as well. Things like that make me excited because they don't make me exciting. I'm sorry. I try and tell myself that. I'm the life of parties. I tell them about my bundler improvements. Oh, goodness me. So exciting. Anyway, but stuff like this hopefully benefits you. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to opt into it. You don't have to worry about your the strategies we can deploy. Stuff like this also can't be done by a bundler on its own. It needs a meta framework because you have to implement not just the initial load, but you also have to track the actual dependencies of the page. So in order to render this page, we had to use these components. So these components are going to be part of the bundle. So we're going to update the HTML of the document and then make that static so that it's going to work. Like only a framework like Nuxt can do something like this. And what I want as much as possible is for that to be for everyone. So right, we have an idea, a new performance improvement, and we can actually ship it, and everyone benefits from it. We shipped 2 new core modules this year, Nuxt Fonts and Nuxt Scripts. Nuxt Fonts does some cool stuff that I've talked about at other occasions, but basically it means that when you load a custom web font, so if you load a custom web font, you may notice that you have like a flash a little bit like that. That's because there's this gap while the browser is downloading the font. The new font comes in, it's the wrong size, it's a different size. I did make this deliberately really different. With Nuxt fonts, it's going to look like this. Still going to be a flash, but it's going to take the same amount of space. That's because if we detect that you're using, I wish I could show you. So Nuxt fonts, all you have to do is use font family in your project. So you just have to do, it's addressing a number of problems with font using custom web fonts. But if you use font family in your project, this is literally the only configuration that you need. This is what happens under the hood. Nuxt font takes that, identifies the font family, looks it up using a library that I've shipped to UnJS that anyone can use, and it's already being used by other meta frameworks, to find the actual URLs of the fonts from any one of 6 different font providers like Google, Bunny, FontShare, Google Icons, Font Source, Adobe, etc., is able to download the file for you, generate the CSS in order to actually enable your browser to access that font, and it injects it for you, so you don't have to configure anything in your custom web font, just works. But not just that, it also does the calculation to take your sans serif, in this case we know that's Arial, but you could specify, we guess that it's Arial, but you could specify a font if you wanted to in the fallback, and we then calculate the difference between the 2 font metrics so that you have a minimum of layout shift in the time before the custom web font loads. And all of this is just included in your CSS. That's through another library I created called Fontaine, which also is cross-framework and can be used in any meta framework. And basically, all of this happens under the hood, and you don't need to think about it. So that I'm pretty excited about. We also shipped Nuxt scripts, which has a range of built-in facade components for different things like YouTube or Google Maps or Vimeo or Intercom. This is synthetic data. This isn't real-world monitoring data because we're too real user data because we're too early on to know. But the testing shows huge improvement in all performance metrics across the board. Some greater, some less. And it ships not just with these facade components, which are integrated with work done by engineers at Google, for example, for the YouTube and Google Maps, but also a number of other sets of features like cookie consents, the ability to take fonts and to take scripts and defer their loading until the Nuxt site is already interactive, for example, add the correct kind of pre-connects, and even do stuff like bundle fonts, so that rather than coming from third-party origins, they're included in your builds, and you don't incur performance costs or, in some cases, ad blocking. And all of that is shipped. So test out Nuxt fonts. We hope that it's going to improve performance on Nuxt sites, because third-party scripts are the worst contributor to bad site performance, and we think we can solve it at the framework level. Coming soon, in the next year, you can expect our first-party modules for Nuxt accessibility, which will integrate deeply with the dev tools to highlight common problems that you may have in your site as you're developing it. So rather than an accessibility audit at the end, you'll get it front and center as you're building. We already have shipped a Nuxt route announcer as a default component in Nuxt, and if you have any ideas for how we can improve accessibility further, I would really like to pursue those. Nuxt auth utils, so we have a Nuxt dash auth utils at the moment, which is a testing ground, and that's going to move to a first-party Nuxt module after a process of RFC. And a Nuxt hints module, which will look for performance improvement opportunities in your project in development, such as, for example, the lack of explicit width and height on an image component that is therefore going to cause layout shift and a bad user experience for your users. Stuff like that we can do at the framework level. We can detect invalid HTML and prevent hydration errors before they happen. And I think that's going to be quite a nice set of developer experience improvements we can ship to. I want to say just very briefly a few things that drive us, that we want to be true of our attitude towards development. Because it's not just features, it's about why and how. So we want to be known for our friendly approach to collaboration. We want to be people who are shipping stuff that other people copy, and we celebrate the people who copy it, and they celebrate us. And we will also want to copy. And like this is an ecosystem. This is not a war, right? We're building the web together. We are collaborators. We are friends. We are people above all, before we are developers in one particular niche. We are already a tiny community. Like, people who build stuff for the web, developers, are tiny compared to the people of the world. And the idea that we have these deep rivalries is a terrible and damning indictment. We don't want to be like that. We want to be center-bounded. I've heard a story about cattle farmers in Australia. I think it's true. And the story is that there are no fences in the outback. You have your cattle, you don't have fences. And you might ask, you might say to the cattle farmer, this is a stupid idea. The cattle can go anywhere. And you'd be right, but they don't. And they stick together, and do you know why? Because the farmer brings out food and water. This is the difference between an outside bounded, where you say, we're in, you're outside, we're putting a wall up, we're putting a barrier, we're separating, because we really don't want people to escape. And a community that's founded based on shared vision and values, where people are part of it because they believe in what you're doing, because the vision is shared, and because there's food and water and hopefully good developer experience. We also really strongly believe in an ecosystem, and I hope you can see it like across the bounds in terms of Nuxt. We offer choice in terms of people being able to pick their provider, whether that's image or router or testing or KV or anything else. And that's very much at the core of who we are and where we've come from. My own background in open source, from my early days playing with Linux, or Puya's background in open source, or Sebastian. Like, as a core team, we very deeply believe in this. This is something that makes us do what we do. And also, I think one of the things that I love about Nuxt, I think we've sort of inherited it from Vue, is the fact that the community is incredible. And I hope you're experiencing that at this conference over these few days. It's something I experience all the time, and it's the greatest privilege I have when I do travel to go to conferences. It's meeting people who are part of the community, because it is truly incredible. And if you've not experienced what it's like in some other communities, then be glad. That doesn't mean we're perfect either. We have opportunities to improve. Here are some teasers. We're going to be merging, so already at nuxters.nuxt.com, you can see your own profile and your involvement and what you've done in the project. We actually want to give you like a user account on nuxt.com, so you can do stuff like save relevant information for your personal resource library. Or you can do things like, already we've shipped an AI integration using Kappa that not only has data based on nuxt.com, but also Nitro and H3 and Unstorage and all the other documentation across our ecosystem. You might want to make that more straightforward and easy to use if you're getting started with Nuxt. Obviously, there's Discord and GitHub, so please do visit them for help. I should say, if I've not said this to you before, I have an open diary. You can go to ro.dev/chat and book a 10-minute call anytime that I'm free. Please don't feel bad about that. I would really love to do that if it would be of any help to you. Particularly if you want to get involved in open source, whether that's a Nuxt or another project, particularly if you feel like you're not sure you belong, or you're not sure whether you would be welcome, I would love to tell you would be welcome. And sometimes, like, being able to do that face-to-face is so much better than just me telling you now from the stage. But please book a call with me. I also want to announce something new today. We have a new team at Nuxt. We have a core team, and we're not changing that, but we're announcing a new team, which actually has been in existence for some time, but we've not talked about it, the ecosystem team. And this is meant for key contributors to the framework. I consider myself a key contributor to the framework, so I am part of it. It's a self-deprecating joke. Key library authors, ambassadors, content creators, Nuxt modules, maintainers. If that is you, please let me know, and I would love to add you. Or if you have recommendations for other people, this is not meant to be an exclusive group. It's not meant to keep people out. It's about recognizing people who are already doing the work that makes Nuxt what it is. It's weekly meetings, an opportunity to dive deeper or be involved in some early projects. And the reason I'm talking about it is because although this is already happening, there's a real danger that you only see the people you already know about. And I don't want that to be the case. Like, I want you to tell me who else should be part of this. So, yes, tell me. And I'm out of time, so sadly you're not going to get my WebSocket implementation on Nuxt Pressable, but it is on GitHub now, and there is a deployed site if you want to check it out. I just want to conclude by saying thank you so much on behalf of not just me, but the whole team. Nuxt wouldn't be what it is without you, and I'm really excited about where we're going. I'm really excited to see what we can build together, so thank you.
Thanks so much, Daniel. That was amazing. I have to say, very bold move to let folks type on the screen throughout the presentation. And yeah, now we're definitely making the directest thing a real thing. But also want to say, I really appreciate the commitment to opting into new features, and that it feels like we can already use Nuxt 4 long before Nuxt 4 is out. In fact, at Netlify, we just published a blog post, I think yesterday, about how it already feels like you're using Nuxt 4, the adapter's up to date, so even when we officially get there, nothing will really change. And I think that's a testament to all the work that you and your team have done. So we don't have any time for questions right now, but I can also vouch for Daniel, and he's fantastic at responding. So find him out in the hallway today, or hit him up on Blue Sky or website or wherever you can find him on the internet. So one more big round of applause for Daniel Rowe.